Hello everybody, welcome to another one of my videos, and this is my review for the Test of Resolve Wars of the Roses Wargame rules by Tim Couper and David Knight. The way this has come about is basically the video that I put up a few weeks ago on how to start wargaming in Wars of the Roses. If you've watched it, then you'll have seen that I recommended a couple of rule sets that you could use that I played, and also commented that there were some other rule sets that were available that I hadn't played. And David had watched the video and he got in touch with me and said, would I like to try Test of Resolve, which is one of the rule sets which I said was available but hadn't yet tried. And I said yes. So he sent me out the cards, the main rule book, and the first of the scenario books, and he also invited me to take part in a Zoom game with himself and Tim and another one of their friends, which was fantastic. So basically this isn't going to be a how to play, although I will talk about the system and show a couple of examples. I'm going to roll through basically the rules, the organisation, how that fits in with how you might wargame now, look at the system a bit, and then just go through sort of what I like about it, what's a little bit different from other war games. So let's start having a look at things. So Test of Resolve, I'll move this to a side, we'll come back to these in a minute. Test of Resolve is a war game set in the Wars of the Roses. It can be played all the way from solo up to multiple players. I've had a little go with a couple of solo games, and in the game that I played on Zoom, there were 4 of us, and it worked really well. You just have to divide up your army under the control of different players. This is a softcover rulebook. It's about 85 pages long, and it contains everything you need to play the game, including some generic scenarios to get you started. This game occupies a bit of a weird space, and somewhere between skirmish and mass battle. You definitely get that mass battle feel, but you don't have necessarily as many units on the board as you would have in other games, and there isn't loads of bookkeeping involved. The rulebook is set out really nicely, and it's broken up into sections as you would expect, with examples and diagrams where needed. You can see here and here. Something I really like about this rulebook is there's references at the bottom of each page to where they're getting their information, to historical texts or to more modern texts. And that's something that is clear from the outset with this rule set, is that the authors have worked really hard to give a more authentic feel for the warfare at the time. This can be seen in the way that archers operate and the way in which the ebb and flow of battle is simulated in this game. The flow of the game is entirely dictated by this game deck here. Now, something that's quite cool about this system is you're not necessarily waiting ages for your next turn, although you can have a run of bad luck. I will roll through a little bit in a minute how this actually works, but basically in order to play this game you will need this deck of cards, and you can either purchase this deck of cards separately, or you can print out a copy from the PDF, or if you wanted to, there's copies in the back of the rulebook. And as you can see, I will go through what these mean. There's lovely contemporary artwork. There's a couple of pictures on here I wish I need to ask them when they got this wrong, because I really like this one of the archer and the guy here, and they're wearing Warwick's livery. Anyway, sorry, that's just something I'd like to know. Anyway, you will need one of these game decks. And the other good thing about this system is that it doesn't really matter how you've based your troops. It's really good with any basing, and from what I can see, you can pretty much use it for any scale. Once you start getting into the smaller scales, say 10mm and 15mm, you might need to switch out inches for centimeters. In Test of Resolve, your army is going to be divided up into 3 divisions, or battles, which is what they were known as in the medieval period. Each of these battles will have a overall commander, and there'll be a commander in charge of everybody, and he will be your general. Troops are divided up into different categories, such as men at arms, which includes noble men at arms, which are your household troops, which are your heavily armoured, plate armoured guys with melee weapons, and they're the ones that follow the noble around, and they're his loyal guards. There's the Retuin troops, which will be things like your billmen. They might be sort of half harnessed with bits of kit. And then you have array. An array is basically troops that are less well armoured, and they're equipped with various bits and bobs. Think more of them like a sort of like a feudal levy. Of course, there are archers, the mainstay of any army at the time, artillery, scurriers, who are light cavalry, crossbows and handgunners, pikes and kern. The main troops that you appear to use in most of these, however, are the archers, the Retuin men-at-arms and the noble men-at-arms. Each type of troop will have a rating of either superior, average or inferior, and that will have effects on how checks are resolved. Speaking of checks, everything in this game is resolved on a d12, so there's no multiple d6. Everything is either an opposed d12 roll or a single d12 roll, and that's a really bad roll, but everything is on that, so that keeps things nice and simple, so you're not having to keep track of lots of different dice. I understand that some people like the feel of loads of dice in their hand, and that's something that I'll come on to a little bit later. There are two basic formations in the game, and that is mass, which is a deep formation, and wide. If you have a commander, commanders must be attached to a melee unit, so this commander here could be attached to them. Archers are generally in a wide formation unless a unit moves through them, or they're forced into a mass formation if they run out of ammunition or if they take part in combat. So you haven't got to worry about sort of multiple columns or anything like that. It's two formations, which keeps things nice and simple. Commanders each have some of their own little variations, so they have different types of quality and temperament, and the only way these can really be killed is in melee or a lucky shot from a bow. The main stat that you're going to be keeping track of in the game is called Resolve. Now, Resolve is effectively the casualty morale system for units. Each unit would have a particular number of Resolve points, which you need to mark at the start of the game to keep track of throughout, and you can use a small dice to do this. So, for example, here, archers have 3 Resolve points and melee units have 4 Resolve points. Resolve points can be lost in the game by losing combat or taking casualties from fire. However, there is ways to strengthen your resolve when you pull the cards out, and you could basically look at healing up some of your units. However, it is also possible that in trying to strengthen your resolve, you actually end up losing some more. And this is effectively just a measure of the company's morale and their willingness to fight. Another consistent number that you have to keep track of is the battle morale points. Now, that's effectively the level of morale for the entire group for which these companies form a part. Now, you calculate this at the start of the game, and you get 3 battle morale points for each melee company and 1 for each archer company. So if this commander was unfortunate enough to just have a battle consisting of these 2 units, he would have 3 morale points for the melee unit and 1 for the archers. As units lose morale points, resolve points, so if this company here lost 1, they would lose 1 from their battle morale. If this company here then lost 2, they would lose 2. And then if they lost another 1, which I can't find, there we go, they would lose the last 1, and they would be testing for the morale of the whole group, and it's entirely possible that the whole battle would flee. In the solo games I've played, and on the Zoom game I played with David and Tim, I was using these little counters to keep track of it, but you could just use a scrap of paper, or you could use some more dice. I just wanted something that kept it quite separate from the dice and was obvious to me. It's a nice little system because it means that even though you might have troops on the board, the attrition that's wearing them down has an effect on their overall willingness to fight. Of course, if you lose your commander, then that has a massive effect on morale, and you'll be losing an additional battle morale point. So if this unit here took say damage from shooting, and if this unit took some damage from shooting and they lost a commander, then you might only end up with 1, and your troops are not going to want to carry on fighting. So let's talk about the cards. Now, the cards dictate the ebb and the flow of battle in this game. And when I originally read the rules, and when I was actually looking into this game, I wasn't sure how these would work. To me, it seemed, is this going to be a bit unfair? Is it going to become that one player never gets to act? But having played it now with David and Tim, and then played some games of my own, this is by far my favourite thing about this game, and it's something which I think could be adapted to a lot of other systems, or if these guys are going to go and explore other rule sets or other periods, this is something that could travel over. Basically, the deck of cards has 2 colours, obviously white for Yorkist and red for Lancastrian. or for Tudor if you're going later in there. And there's 2 copies. Well, there's basically two identical decks that you pop into here with the same number of copies of each card. You shuffle them together at the start of the turn or the game, and then whichever colour is on top, they have the initiative. So in this case, York has the initiative. What you do is you basically draw off of the top like this until you get to the opposing player's colour. That shows you that you have 3 actions. So you've got a play deck here of 3 actions. Pop that down so you know you've got 3 actions, but you don't know what they are going to be. And you turn these cards over one at a time and resolve them. Let's have a look at what the Yorkist player's done. So the Yorkist player's first action is move and melee. So all battles in the Yorkist army would get to move all of their companies. Now, we'll talk about movement. We might as well do that now. Now, movement is random in this game. It's basically done on a D12 or a D12 plus a modifier if you're cavalry or light infantry. And you roll, so if this guy was going to be moving his battles, so I'll pop that there, all of these guys would move 1 D12, so we'd roll, and that's the distance that all of the units would move. So 3, so all of these units would get to move 3 inches. So they could go to there, and they could go to there. If you want to pivot or turn at the start of your move, it costs you 3 inches of movement. So you've really got to think about how you're going to use it. So if I rolled an 8, and if this unit here wanted to pivot, that would cost them 3, and then they could go 5 inches straight forward. Random movement is it can be interesting in games. I know that some people don't like it at all. They like knowing exactly how far their guys are going to go. I've got games that do both. I enjoyed it a lot in this game, and I think it's something, again, you're not guaranteed to get that charge in. You might have all of your guys lined up, but if you roll a natural 1, oh, look at that. I didn't even think you have to try. Then there's no movement on your side at all, and your plan can completely fall apart. After they've moved, if there's any melee going on, if they've contacted anybody, or if there's any ongoing melee, then you would resolve that. Right, let's look at the next card for the Yorkists. That is an event. So event cards are optional cards, and they're just used for effectively modelling events in scenarios. The game that I played with the guys on Zoom was a recreation of the Battle of Northampton in 1460, and that battle was notorious because the rain caused the cannons on the Lancastrian side to get wet, the powder got wet, and they couldn't fire. So when an event card was drawn, we rolled a dice to see if, well, basically the rain would start. We didn't, and then the Lancastrian player, when they went to roll for their cannons, had to see if their powder got wet. If the event card was drawn again, then the rain stopped. You could create your own events if you were just doing some generic scenarios, or some of your own. Maybe reinforcements turn up. Maybe there's a snowstorm like at Towton. Maybe the wind picks up and your arrows get extra range. And it's a nice way of adding something in. Alternatively, they can also just act as a bit of a blank in your deck. So, and as you can see, good old Edward IV on the front there. So event cards are something that, again, it's a way of including them in the game. And the final card here is either a fire or a strength and resolve. So you have a choice here. Basically, either all your eligible missile troops and artillery can fire, and when all the fire is completed, any company in the army may attempt to recover a lost resolve point. So for example here, if we chuck these guys down to 3 resolve points, there we go, the archers could do their missile fire, and then they try to strengthen their resolve, and you would roll a check to see if that happens. It's entirely possible they would get one of their resolve points back, but it's also possible that in trying to strengthen their resolve, they actually end up more panicked. Now, this is something I really like about the game, is not a dead cert. The action that you've got on your card is actually going to come off or be able to do anything. Other types of cards in here include the event. There we go, we've got Margaret of Anjou. So in this case here, the Lancastrian would only have got a single turn, because you can see the next card is Yorkist. So there would have been an event, and then we're back to the Yorkist. The Yorkist only has 1, so he has a roll of 1 card. Here we get another move and melee. Then the Lancastrian, we get a play deck of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is, you know, I probably haven't shuffled these up that well, but that was possible. So the Lancastrians here would start off with by firing and strengthening their resolve. A move and melee that we've already seen. A blank card, which I probably should have taken out. Another fire and strengthen resolve. Milling around is basically nothing happens. Your army just stands around and does nothing. Another move and melee. An event. And finally, missile supply. Now, missile supply basically means that the active player makes a missile supply check on all of his missile units, because running out of ammunition was something that happened quite a lot. If they run out of ammunition, the archers can become sort of light infantry. They're not great in combat, but it's a way of representing that, which I think is fantastic. And tracking missile stuff is something that I've looked at in our own games, and it's nice to see a system actually taking that into account. A couple of other cards that can come out are the Flabbergasted card, and this means that a notable incident has occurred, and this card impacts the next card to be played in the play deck. So if you had the Flabbergasted card and then the next one was the missile supply, you would check the rule book, but this would mean that basically you would fire all your capable missiles. So basically you wouldn't have to check for that. It would mean that effectively you're going to get to shoot. If you get in a move and melee, it can increase your charge range, it can give you a bonus in the first round of combat. Now the opposite of the Flabbergasted card is the Flummox card. Confusion has arisen, and if there are any cards remaining in your play deck, the opposing player would get to use those. So if the Yorkist player had drawn this play deck of, say, there we go, 4 cards, and the first one he pulled out is Flummoxed, well, he's in big trouble, because it basically means now that these become Lancastrian, and this represents that confusion of not knowing who is on whose side. So a Lancastrian would then get to do a move in melee, he would then get an event, and he would then get to fire and strengthen his resolve. Cards add a really nice ebb and flow to the game, and it makes it very unpredictable, which is something which I think the rules authors and gamers, we find very, very hard to represent in battles. What I'm going to do, I'm going to set up a small example here, and then I'm going to show you guys just a simple example of some missile fire and a melee exchange, because ultimately this is a war game, and the one factor that I think everybody wants to know about is, how is combat resolved? Is it a system that I would like? So just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to create 2 very, very small opposing forces, and I'll just roll you through a couple of bits, and hopefully I won't get it wrong. Okay, so I've set up a quick example here. On the left, we have a company of archers and a company of men-at-arms. These are superior troops who are in plate. On the right, we have 2 companies of Retuin troops, so basically billmen. Everybody is at their full resolve points. We shall say that these guys here are the Warwick's men, and over here we have some Yorkists, so they'll be using a yellow dice. So let's assume that the Yorkies have picked a fire and strengthen resolve card. So they are going to fire with this group of archers, and they're going to fire at this group of men that are approaching here. As we can see, they are about 9 inches away. So we go over to the fire resolution chart and we look at the modifiers, and then we make our roll. So this is the table for the fire table for working out missiles hit. And basically there's a number of circumstances that you have to look at, and those will add modifiers, either pluses or minuses, as you go through them. So first of all, we look at the firer. Now, is it bow and dart versus plate? No, it's not. And are you a small company? No. So you can see here, so for no, we are at +0. Missile range, are we between 10 and 15 inches? No, we're actually at 9. So you look here, longbow, 0 to 10. Again, no modifier. It's not artillery. It's versus the front, so no modifier. The target isn't scurriers or anything else, so there's no modifier. And circumstances, it isn't multiple targets, and we haven't lost any resolve points. So after all that, we can see that basically it's a flat roll. There is no modifier to it. Or if we look at the top, a hit, 1 resolve point is lost if you roll a natural 12, or if you use it, if it's bow, darts or artillery, 9 or more, and handguns on an 8. So basically on a 9 or more, target is going to lose 1 resolve point. And my handy Yorkist dice tray, so we're looking for a 9. A 10. So that is a hit, and the target will lose 1 resolve point. So this unit now drops from 4 resolve points down to 3, and the battle that they are part of would lose 1 battle morale point. You do not have to take a test of resolve as a result of missile fire. You do if it's artillery fire or if you lose casualties in hand-to-hand combat, but they basically just suck that up and then they move on. So we're a couple of actions later, the archers have run out of ammo and formed a mass formation, but in Warwick's turn he's managed to push all of his guys into combat. So we're now going to roll through a couple of rounds of combat and just see how that works. So if we start up here with the archers, these billmen are eager to get some revenge for their losses that they suffered to the arrow storm earlier. Now, the way that combat works is you look at a table and you work out your modifiers again. You both will make an opposed roll on d12s against each other, and then whoever has the higher result is the winner, and the difference between the two scores denotes how many resolve points you lose or if you rout. So if we have a look at the table here, so we'll start by working out what Warwick's bonuses are going to be. Now, we're going to say that Warwick charged. So first of all, we look at the quality. Now, the billmen are just average troops, so plus nothing. The circumstances, are they isolated? Now, isolated is very important because in this period of warfare, you needed support, and basically you are considered isolated if you don't have a friendly unit within 2 inches of you. So as we can see, they are down here, so they're not isolated, they're not flanking. However, shock is effectively, did they charge? Have they got that charge bonus? Warwick's men did, so Warwick's men are getting +1. Are they archers? No, but the enemy will be suffering some minuses, so there is no problem there. Enemy location, nothing there, but we have lost 1 resolve point. So we get +1 because we charged, but we've lost 1 resolve point to the arrows earlier, which is -1. So Warwick's men are rolling evens, there's no modifier. If we now have a look at the archers, they are average fighters. They've got no issues here. However, we can see that archers suffer a -2 to their rolls in combat. They haven't lost any resolve points and they are not outnumbered. So the result of that is that Warwick's men are rolling with no modifiers and the Yorkist archers are rolling at -2. So we want red for Warwick and yellow for the Yorkist. So red has no modifiers and yellow is -2. Okay, so the archers finished -2, so they got a 1 and Warwick's men got a 10. Now that is a difference of 9. That's big and it's going to be bad for the archers. So we go back to our table and we can see that the losses of 9, 6 to 9 mean 2 resolve points are lost. So the archers are going to go down to 1 resolve point. The battle morale points would also go down by 2 as well. And they are also now going to have to take a test of resolve. The books handily do have all of these tables at the back, so you can see to take a resolve test, taken whenever a company is hit by artillery or loses a melee round or rolls a natural 1 on a strength and resolve test. So in order to do the test, we look at the resolve points losses. So they've lost 2. So you need 2 or more, but there are modifiers. Let's look at the quality. They are average, so there's nothing. They've lost 2 resolve points. They're not panicked, they're not isolated. So we can see that per resolve point loss, that's -2. They've taken, so it's 2 losses plus the 2 points they lost. They need to roll a 4 or more. 4 or more. Okay, so that's not good. So if we go back to the resolve table, so we failed. We lost more than 2 resolve points, so that unit would rout. So those archers would be gone. They would be removed from the table and their remaining resolve points would be taken off of the battle morale. This unit, as a victorious unit, is allowed to pivot, so they would potentially pivot like that. Now let's have a look at this combat down here, just as a way of a bit of a further example. So we're still saying that Warwick's men charged, so Warwick's men are going to be +1. There's no other bonuses because they haven't lost any resolve points, so the red dice is going to be +1. Let's look at the Yorkists. Now the Yorkist men are superior, +1. However, because they've lost the archers that were supporting them, they are now isolated. They don't have a friendly unit within 2 inches, so they are -2 for being isolated. So +1 for being superior, -2. They are at -1 altogether. They haven't taken any losses. So Warwick's men are at +1 and the Yorkists are at -1. +1 on the red dice, -1 on the yellow dice. Oh, so +1 on the red and -1 on it. That is 10-10. So if we look at the resolution chart here, you can see that with a 0 to 1 difference, it's an ongoing. There's no losses. So this combat would now grind on into the next turn. In the game that we played, we had some crazy things going on with units. You can choose to fight again. You can push the combat until you have a unit that breaks, basically. So it's not just one resolution. If one company lost some resolve points and didn't rout, you can choose to carry on fighting and you would fight another round of combat until one goes. So let's say in that combat, this unit had lost 2 resolve points, but they hadn't routed. you could choose to carry on fighting. You could withdraw and do everything there, but in our game we just carried on fighting, which is probably a bad tactic, because in our game Warwick was dead before the end of the second turn. I think Falkenberg died quite early and I managed to get Edward killed. For those wondering, we did lose. The Yorkists did lose the Battle of Northampton when I was in command of Edward. Combat is very quick. As you can see, it's entirely possible to wipe someone off, but it is also possible to get completely hung up on one side as well, and you can have that ebb and flow. So that's the basic system of the game, and I really like it. I really do. I think that it's very elegant just having one dice, and it does allow, we're using a D12, because I did ask them about this, like, why a D12? Why not D6 or 2D6? And the D12 just allows a wider range of results. That's how simple it is, guys. Basically, the rest of the book is concerned with things like terrain, how to create generic engagements, generic scenarios, rules that you might want to give your commanders. As you can see, the scenarios are all sort of laid out with what you might want to take. And to be honest, if we have a look at just how force organisation might work, you're not going to have a huge number of figures per battle. Jumping very, very quickly to the scenario book, you can see here how everything is set out. So in this battle here, which is Mortimer's Cross, it would show that William Herbert would have 3 units of men-at-arms and 2 of archers. Now, just to sort of put that into some kind of context, using the models that I've already had out, there's 1 unit of archers. There would be, for example, 3 units of men-at-arms. There's the commander himself, and it'd just be 1 more unit of archers. So you're not talking vast numbers of models, and this is why I'm sort of stuck between this. Is it a skirmish or is it a mass battle? It's almost like you're playing a mass battle game but with skirmish level of troops, but that makes it very accessible and not hugely expensive model wise to get into. As I've got the scenario book out, I might as well just have a quick word about it. So this is the one that was released with the rule book, and this covers everything from 1455, so effectively First Battle of St Albans, up to 1461, which is Towton. Now again, there is a high level of research that has gone into this. There's references throughout it, and they've set out all of the forces pretty much based along the lines of what was there at the time. There's lots of events that take part in them. They even mention the historical outcome, and there's also a bibliography for each of the scenarios for further reading, or to get some, or to if you want to know where they got their information from. So if we have a look here, this is the Battle of Northampton. This is the scenario that we played in the Zoom game. And if we have a look here, rain, an event card is added to the Yorkist deck. When it is turned, a Yorkist player rolls a d12, 1 to 6 to weather remains dry, and the card remains in the deck. 7 to 12, there is a sudden sharp downpour. The card is removed from the deck. Then you have a wet powder check. If it has rained, the artillery may be rendered ineffective. On a fire and strength and resolve card, first perform the following check to see if the gun is able to fire. There's also, obviously it's the Wars of the Roses, a lot of people defected, so there's lots and lots of ways for each of these games to be played out. This book is very nice. They've gone through all of the scenarios and all of the battles, and I know that the second book has now been released, which takes part from basically 1462 and all of the mopping up operations that Edward undertook in the north, all the way up to, I was about to say 1485, but obviously with the Battle of Bosworth, but that's not the final battle of the Wars of the Roses. It's 1487, which is the Battle of Stoke Field. Now, I believe they're going to be doing some other scenario books. They're going to be looking at some of the smaller engagements and potentially even some of the stuff in Ireland, although that may be included in the one that's just come out. You don't need this to play the game, but if you're playing this because you like the Wars of the Roses, I don't see why you wouldn't get this, so that you could at least take part in those battles. Back to the main rulebook now, and one of the final chapters does deal with some advanced rules that you may want to add in once you're comfortable with the system. This includes rules for such things as small companies, independent commanders, basically adding a bit more flavor, unreliable commanders, mercenaries, and things such as incidents, battle identity confusion, which is something that happened quite a lot, and the God Save the King test, which is something which I really liked. There is a handy section on definitions, so if you, for example, wanted to know, hang on, how do you know what isolated is, instead of having to, launch your way through the whole book. Isolated: in general, melee and missile company is isolated, and no other friendly or foot mounted company in support range, which is 2 inches on foot. Very helpful. I wish more games did this, or had an index. If you're not going to have an index, have something like this where key terms are explained. Finally, at the back, as already mentioned, we have the quick reference for resolve checks. We have the copies of the cards, and on the very back of both this and the scenario book, you have the two main tables you're going to be using, which is the fire table and the melee table. There's a handy little box down here just to remind you of the movement distances and the standoff distance, which I hadn't mentioned, but effectively standoff distance means that a longbow unit cannot move within 9 inches of a melee unit, crossbows within 9, handguns 4, and darts 2. So that is a very, very quick run through and overview of the rules, and I'll just sum up now and tell you guys what I think. Okay, so summing up, this is a really interesting and really fun game. As I say, they sent me the rulebook, the scenario book, and the cards, and the Zoom game was a lot of fun. I've also now had a solo game, a proper solo game of this using my forces. Now, I would basically say this is an elegant system. I like personally the resolution on the single D12. It reminds me of other games I've got, things like Dead Man's Hand. Very, very different kettle of fish, but it's a single dice roll on a dice that has a large number of results. However, I can see that to some people who, especially people who like rolling, say, masses of D6 for their attacks, this may not appeal. So if you are going to be looking at these rules, you're already going to be into the Wars of the Roses. You're already going to be into that period, I would imagine. If you're looking for something which is more gamey, maybe a bit more, I don't want to use the term arcadey, then this may not be the system for you. But I wouldn't let that put you off trying it. In fact, I'd always say try every system and judge every system on its own merits. So talking about cost, on the website, the main rulebook and with the PDFs are about £30. You have the cards and you have the scenario books, but there are all sorts of bundles on there. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to go and check them out. I have seen a couple of comments from people who are concerned about the cost, especially as it's a new system. However, what I'd say to that is if you're looking at getting into something like Saga, for example, you need to buy the main rulebook, you need to buy the scenario, the universe books, and you need to get the dice, and you're looking at about a £55 investment there. So you're still going to be less than that. Ultimately, this is still less than a video game, and I'm probably going to get far more hours of enjoyment out of this. Now, I wouldn't say that this is going to replace my other medieval rule sets, but it's definitely a rule set that I will be playing alongside. Our Zoom game played very, very fast, and it was very unpredictable, and that's something that I really, really like about this system. I like games where that unpredictability is somehow conveyed, because there's nothing worse than turning up and playing a game and by turn 2 knowing that you're already going to lose, but you've still got 4 more turns and 3 more hours to play just to confirm that result. There's ways that you can strengthen your units, and with the inclusion of event cards and the flummox card, there's never a point where you're not going to be doing anything. You might see that the Lancastrian player might have pulled out 5 cards, but if the second one is a flummox card, then you're going to be acting straight away. That's just the way that battles worked at the time. There was a lot of unpredictability, and I really like that they have done that. I think they've done a great job of mimicking the warfare and the feel of the 15th century. This could be used to do the warfare on the continent as well. It's just there'll be a bit more artillery. Again, you only need a 6x4 to play this. You're not looking at 7x5 or 8x10. So it's very, very quick to set up. I can see this getting a lot of play in clubs and at home. I'm not a tournament player, so I don't really know how you could put this into a tournament setting, but I'm sure someone would find a way. If you're looking for something that gives you that feeling of a big mass battle game, but you've only got a couple of hours on a weeknight, then this might be a system that you want to come and check out. And I recommend this basically if you're looking for something different, if you want to add a new rule set to your repertoire and you want to give it a try. And I know there's a lot of people who are getting into Wars of the Roses at the moment, but if you're worried about not having enough space for big mass battle games, but you still want that feel, then I would recommend checking this out. I'm going to be getting some battle reports up on the channel. I've talked to my regular opponent, and we're going to be doing some games of this, and we're really looking forward to it. So if you have any questions, just let me know. I'll link to their, again, website is down below. Their Facebook group is down below as well. There's some great stuff going on there, and the guys are always happy to answer some questions. Thank you once again both to David and Tim for sending me these and for letting me take part in their game. They were very patient with me if I had any questions or if I was getting a bit confused about things. But to be honest, guys, by the end of playing that Zoom game, I wasn't even needing to check the tables. I mean, you will learn these results quite fast, and it's just there now as an aid memoir, because it really was that easy to pick up. Anyway, I hope you guys all are staying well. If you liked the video, then why not give it a like? If you've got any comments, pop them down below, or any questions, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care, and I'll see you all again soon. Cheers.